All right, let's dive right into this ultimate study guide explainer. Today, we're taking those seriously dense, acronym heavy information and communication technology frameworks and turning them into a crystal clear, easy to digest masterclass. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of digital learning platforms, metadata standards, or open source licenses out there, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break it all down, step by step. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start macro with digital learning ecosystems, zoom into interactive class tier tools, and then tackle curation and metadata standards. After that, we'll hit information credibility with the CRAP test, unpack open licensing and the 5 Rs, and cap it all off with some rapid-fire ICT exam review questions to really lock it in. So, Section 1, Digital Learning Ecosystems. Let's look at the macro-level architectures where digital learning actually lives and breathes on a global scale. Not all educational software is built the same, right? Think of learning management systems, your LMS, like Canvas or Blackboard, as your administrative powerhouses. They're the operational core for schools and corporate compliance, handling the heavy lifting like formal tracking and automated grading. Online course libraries, though, like LinkedIn Learning and Coursera, totally different vibe. They are curated repositories focused entirely on self-paced, continuous workforce upskilling. And finally, you've got e-learning marketplaces like Udemy. These are totally decoupled systems built specifically to let independent creators market and monetize their own specialized knowledge. Grasping this taxonomy really is step one in understanding the whole digital learning landscape. Moving from the macro to the micro, we hit Section 2, Interactive Class Tier Tools. Now we're talking about the utilities teachers actually use on the ground to spark real-time engagement. There are literally dozens of tools out there, so rather than listing them all out, let's look at how they group together conceptually. You've got your practice and reinforcement tools, think Gimkit and Kahoot, using gamified retrieval to boost memory. Then you've got visual collaboration spaces like Miro and Padlet. But what's really fascinating is this third category, class trend visualization. Tools like Edwardle can take a massive amount of open-ended student responses and instantly aggregate them into word clouds. It shows a teacher exactly where the consensus is or where common misconceptions are hiding. And finally, media integration tools like Edpuzzle let educators embed formative questions right into streaming video. It literally shifts students from being passive viewers to active participants. But how do you organize all those files? That brings us to Section 3, Curation and Metadata Standards. How do you make things searchable? And more importantly, stop them from corrupting over time? It all really boils down to a 3-part curation lifecycle. Step 1, you have to collect the content, whether you're digitizing an old historical document or gathering a born digital asset. Step 2 is organize. You absolutely must meticulously catalog these assets using strict naming conventions and metadata. And finally, Step 3, maintain. Digital files degrade or they get accidentally altered, so repository managers use techniques like checksums, which are essentially just digital fingerprints, along with diversified redundancy to guarantee those files stay exactly as they were the day they were uploaded. But to actually find those organized files later, we rely heavily on metadata standards. Think of Dublin Core as a super popular, simplified universal language. It allows completely different digital platforms to talk to each other and share search results seamlessly. Meanwhile, the ISO OAIS reference model is the absolute gold standard blueprint. It was originally developed for space agencies, believe it or not, and it has been the go-to standard since 2005 for creating and maintaining secure long-term digital repositories. Which brings us to Section 4, Information Credibility and CRAAP. With an absolute ocean of digital content out there, how do we filter the gold from the garbage? Enter the CRAP test. Yeah, I know, the name is hilarious, but it's an incredibly effective framework. It was actually developed back in 2004 by librarians at California State University, Chico. They were just sick and tired of students citing sketchy, unvetted websites in their papers. So they built this brilliant evaluative checklist. Let's break down the acronym. You really have to scrutinize 5 things. First, currency. A cybersecurity guide from 2016 is pretty much useless today, right? The info has to be timely. Second, relevance. Does it actually support your argument at the right academic level? Third, authority. Look, an influencer with 2 million followers might seem credible, but do they actually have the credentials of a CDC researcher? Fourth, accuracy. Can these claims be backed up with peer-reviewed evidence? And finally, purpose. What is the underlying motive here? Is the site genuinely designed to educate you, or is it covered in affiliate links trying to sell you something? Every single source needs to pass through this filter. All right, Section 5, open licensing and the 5 Rs. Once you've found accurate info, you've got to navigate the intellectual property laws governing how you can actually use it. Here's the thing. Just because a resource is free to read online absolutely does not mean it's open. For a digital resource to truly be considered an open educational resource, an OER, it must legally grant you the 5 Rs. You need the right to retain your own copy, reuse it in your class, revise or modify it to fit your students, remix it with other open materials, and redistribute your brand new version back out into the world. If it doesn't give you these 5 explicit permissions, it's not truly open. Now, this comparison right here is absolutely vital. Standard copyright is the default setting. It means all rights reserved. The creator legally locks down the work, and you can't revise or remix it without their explicit written permission. Contrast that with Creative Commons, which operates on some rights reserved. It's so clever. It's basically built out of modular conditions, almost like Lego blocks. A creator can mix and match conditions like attribution, non-commercial, share-alike, or no derivatives, granting the public upfront permission to share and adapt their work without having to ask first. Time for Section 6, ICT Exam Review Questions. We've covered a ton of ground, so let's shift gears and test that knowledge to lock in these concepts. Ready? Question 1. Think back to our software licensing chat. Which specific open-source license forces developers to share their underlying source code if their software is being used over a network, effectively closing the software as a service loophole? The answer? The GNU AGPL v3 license. It's what we call a strong copyleft license, making it way stricter than permissive licenses like MIT or Apache, which really just ask you to keep the copyright notice intact and call it a day. Moving on to question 2. Let's say you're an educator remixing open educational resources to build a new textbook. Why can't a resource-licensed CC BY-SA be legally combined with a resource-licensed CC BY and CSA? Because their share-alike conditions completely conflict. The first license demands that only remixed work be shared under a license allowing commercial use. But the second one explicitly restricts any remixes strictly to non-commercial use. You literally cannot satisfy both legal requirements at the same time. And this is exactly why digital curators always have to consult a Creative Commons remix chart before compiling assets. So as we watch this massive, industry-wide shift away from closed, expensive textbooks and isolated classrooms and move toward these open, transparent, and collaborative digital learning ecosystems, the big question I want to leave you with today is this. How are you going to leverage these exact tools, standards, and licenses to build a verifiable, engaging learning architecture of your own? The pieces are all there, so get out there and build something amazing.